Have you ever finished a prayer, closed the Qur'an, made sincere dua, and still felt that something inside you was untouched? You stood there before Allah. You tried to focus. You tried to soften your heart. You tried to leave your worries behind. But after the prayer ended, the same anxiety returned, the same comparison, the same need for people's approval, the same fear that maybe you are doing everything outwardly, but something inside you is still asleep. You know this feeling. You sit after Salah and wonder, why do I still feel heavy? You recite Allah's name and still feel the same jealousy rising. You listen to reminders about sincerity, humility, and love of Allah, but then you catch yourself wanting to be seen as someone who has those qualities. And this creates a painful question that many sincere believers carry silently. Why am I doing what I was told to do, yet my soul still feels distant? Most people respond by adding more lectures, more books, more information, more practices. But Ibn Arabi gives a completely different diagnosis. He says the problem is not always that the soul lacks actions. Sometimes the problem is that the soul performing those actions is covered by hidden veils, attachments, assumptions, desires, and illusions about who we think we are. Tazkiyah is not simply making your outside cleaner. It is removing what prevents your heart from seeing Allah clearly. And by the end of this video, you will understand why your soul can worship while still feeling restless, what hidden diseases block transformation, and how Ibn Arabi describes the journey of actually purifying the heart. In this video, we are going to look at exactly 5 stages of how the soul is actually purified. First, we will look at why many people perform worship but still feel spiritually empty, and why the problem may not be the amount of worship, but the condition of the soul performing it. Then, we will examine how Ibn Arabi explains the hidden diseases of the nafs that distort our relationship with Allah, even when our actions appear righteous. After that, we will uncover why purification is not about creating a perfect personality, but removing the illusions that prevent us from seeing reality clearly. Then, we will explore the deepest stage of Tazkiyah, where the soul stops making itself the center and becomes a clear mirror for divine presence. And finally, we will look at practical ways to begin this purification process tonight. Not by collecting more information, but by transforming how we observe ourselves before Allah. Think of a young Muslim woman in her late 20s, who spends her mornings listening to Qur'an during her commute, follows scholars online, attends classes on weekends, and genuinely loves learning about Islam. From the outside, everything looks like growth. Her knowledge increases. Her vocabulary improves. She understands concepts she never understood before. But late at night, when the world becomes quiet, she still feels the same emptiness she felt years ago. She still wonders, why do I know so much, but why do I feel so unchanged? This is one of the deepest struggles of the modern believer. We live in a time where Islamic knowledge is more accessible than ever. A person can listen to thousands of lectures. They can read explanations of Qur'an. They can study complex religious concepts from their phone. Yet many people still struggle with the same inner battles, the need for validation, the desire to be admired, the comparison between their journey and someone else's, the frustration that knowledge has entered the mind but has not completely transformed the heart. The problem is not always a lack of information. The deeper problem is the distance between knowing truth and becoming transformed by truth. And this is exactly where Tazkiyah becomes essential. Allah says in Surah Shams, by the soul and him who proportioned it, and inspired it with its wickedness and its righteousness. Successful indeed is the one who purifies it. Notice something powerful. Allah does not define success here by wealth, not by reputation, not by how impressive a person appears. Success is connected to the purification of the soul. Tazkiyah is not a side topic in Islam. It is connected to the purpose of human existence. And when we discuss this, we are not entering vague spirituality. We are entering the world of one of Islam's most influential thinkers, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. Born in 1165 in Andalusia, Ibn Arabi was not simply a poet or someone speaking about emotions. He was a scholar who studied Qur'an, hadith, theology, philosophy, and the spiritual dimensions of human existence. His major works, especially Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusus al-Hikam, explore the nature of the human being, the nafs, the heart, spiritual perception, and the journey toward knowing Allah. Ibn Arabi's question was not only, what actions are you performing? His deeper question was, what kind of person is performing those actions? Because two people can perform the same prayer. Two people can give the same charity. Two people can recite the same Qur'an. But one action can come from humility, and another can secretly come from the desire to become a certain image of oneself. The outside may look identical. The inside can be completely different. Modern psychology describes part of this through the idea of self-schema, the internal story a person carries about who they are. A person does not experience life directly. They experience life through the lens of their beliefs about themselves. Ibn Arabi goes deeper. He explains that when the false image of the self becomes too powerful, it becomes a veil between the servant and Allah. The question is not only, how much do I know? The deeper question is, has what I know reached the place where I actually see myself differently before Allah? Because Tazkiyah is not information entering the mind. It is transformation entering the soul. Imagine a 29-year-old man named Yusuf. Yusuf works in a professional office in London. For 7 years, he has not missed Fajr. His co-workers know him as disciplined. His friends know him as someone serious about his deen. During his commute, he listens to Islamic lectures. He spends his lunch breaks reading. He tries to improve himself. One evening, Yusuf shares a reminder online about patience. He writes something sincere, something beautiful. Within an hour, people begin commenting, "MashaAllah, this was exactly what I needed. May Allah increase you. Your reminders always help me." Yusuf reads the comments, and for a moment, something warms inside him. But then he notices something uncomfortable. The warmth is not only because Allah was remembered. There is another feeling underneath. A feeling that says, they see me as someone close to Allah. And suddenly, Yusuf feels disturbed, because he discovers something he was not expecting. The ego does not only want worldly status. Sometimes it wants spiritual status. This is exactly what Ibn Arabi is describing. One of the most difficult things about the soul is that it can hide from itself. A person can recognize arrogance when someone shows off wealth. They can recognize pride when someone boasts about intelligence. They can recognize vanity when someone seeks physical beauty. But spiritual pride is harder to detect because it can wear the clothing of righteousness. A person may stop wanting to be admired for money. Then the same desire returns through knowledge. They stop wanting praise for appearance. Then the same desire returns through worship. They stop seeking status in the world. Then they begin seeking status among people of religion. Ibn Arabi writes in Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah about the subtle conditions of the seeker and the hidden obstacles that appear on the path toward Allah. His concern is not only whether the servant performs good actions. His concern is whether the servant understands what moves the heart behind those actions. Because the nafs is not always obvious. Sometimes it does not tell you leave prayer. Sometimes it says, pray, but make sure people know you are someone who prays. Sometimes it does not say, stop learning. Sometimes it says learn, so people recognize your understanding. The action remains, but the center changes. And that is why Tazkiyah begins with awareness, not self-hatred, not constantly attacking yourself. Awareness. Imagine a window covered in dust. A person stands inside the room and says, I need more sunlight. So they search for more sunlight. They collect more lamps. They open more doors. But they never clean the window. The sunlight was never absent. The problem was the layer covering the glass. The heart is similar. Allah's guidance is not limited. Allah's mercy is not scarce. But the heart can become covered by attachments that distort what it receives. This is why Ibn Arabi emphasizes knowing the hidden realities of the self, because the person who does not understand the disease cannot properly treat it. Modern psychology calls one part of this self-serving bias. Human beings naturally interpret information in ways that protect their positive image of themselves. Even when we examine ourselves, we often examine ourselves while secretly trying to prove that we are already good. We ask, am I sincere? But sometimes underneath that question is another desire. I hope the answer confirms that I am sincere. Science describes the mechanism. Ibn Arabi points toward the spiritual consequence. The problem is not simply having a self-image. The problem is when that self-image becomes more important than the truth. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever been more upset about looking like a bad person than actually becoming a better person? Have you ever worried more about what people think of your faith than what Allah knows about your heart? This is where purification becomes uncomfortable. Because the nafs does not only resist correction through obvious sins, sometimes it resists by creating a beautiful image of itself. The person says, I want to become a better Muslim. But hidden underneath is, I want to become the kind of person who feels proud of being a better Muslim. The first is surrender. The second can become another form of attachment. But that is only the first layer. Most people stop here. They think purification means identifying bad qualities and replacing them with good qualities. Ibn Arabi goes further. He asks a more difficult question. What happens when the person trying to purify themselves becomes attached to the image of being purified? Because the ego does not always leave when you become religious. Sometimes it learns how to speak religious language. The soul is not purified when it looks better, it is purified when it needs less to be seen. But if the ego can hide inside worship, then we must ask a deeper question. What exactly is the self that we are trying to purify? And why does Ibn Arabi say the problem is not the existence of the self, but the illusion it creates? Imagine a 34-year-old woman named Maryam. For years, Maryam has worked hard to rebuild herself. After a difficult chapter in her life, she becomes disciplined. She exercises regularly. She studies Islam. She controls her emotions. She becomes the person others describe as strong. People admire her patience. They admire her maturity. But privately, something is happening. She is exhausted. Because every mistake feels like a collapse. If she misses a goal, she thinks, I failed. If someone criticizes her, she thinks, my value has decreased. If she struggles emotionally, she thinks, after all this work, how can I still be like this? Maryam thinks she has purified herself. But something deeper is happening. She has built a more sophisticated prison. The prison is not made of obvious sins. The prison is made of an identity, a perfect version of herself that she feels forced to protect. This is where Ibn Arabi's teaching becomes deeper. Many people misunderstand purification. They think Tazkiyah means destroying the self. They think spiritual growth means becoming someone who has no personality, no desires, no human qualities. But Ibn Arabi does not describe the human being this way. The problem is not that you exist. The problem is that you forget what your existence depends upon. In Fusus al-Hikam, Ibn Arabi explains the relationship between the human being and the divine reality reflected through creation. The human being does not become complete by becoming independent. The human being becomes complete by recognizing complete dependence upon Allah. The servant does not disappear. The illusion disappears. Imagine a mirror. The purpose of a mirror is not to create light. Its beauty comes from reflecting something beyond itself. But imagine the mirror becoming proud. Imagine the mirror saying, "Look how bright I am." It forgets something fundamental. The light never came from the mirror. The mirror was always receiving. The human being is similar. Your abilities, your intelligence, your beauty, your discipline, your acts of worship, none of these exist independently from Allah. The problem begins when the servant takes what Allah gave and turns it into a separate identity. I am the one who knows. I am the one who worships. I am the one who has reached a certain level. The heart slowly moves from gratitude into ownership. And this is one of the deepest diseases of the soul. The person does not only want blessings, the person begins to feel like the source of those blessings. This is where the Qur'an gives a powerful reminder: do not be like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. Forgetting Allah does not only mean forgetting rituals. A person can remember Allah verbally, while forgetting Allah as the source of their entire existence. And when that happens, they become trapped inside a false version of themselves. Now here is where this becomes uncomfortable. Your biggest spiritual obstacle may not be your weakness. It may be your obsession with becoming someone without weakness. Have you ever noticed how much time you can spend thinking about yourself while trying to escape yourself? Am I sincere enough? Am I spiritual enough? Am I progressing enough? The person wants to leave the ego behind. But the ego remains at the center of every question. Modern psychology describes this through self-focused attention. Researchers have found that excessive internal monitoring can increase anxiety because the person becomes trapped constantly observing and evaluating themselves. Ibn Arabi describes a spiritual version of this problem. The solution is not endless attention toward the constructed self. The solution is returning attention toward Allah. Because even the desire to become perfect can become a hidden form of self-occupation. The person says, "I want to remove my ego," but the ego quietly replies, "Excellent, let me lead that project." The heart becomes trapped trying to manage itself. But purification is not about becoming obsessed with the self. It is about seeing through the false claims of the self. The goal is not, "Look how pure I have become." The goal is, "Look how much I have stopped standing between myself and Allah." The soul becomes free when it stops worshipping the image it created of itself. But if the self can create illusions even through spiritual effort, then we must go deeper, because the next veil is even more subtle: the thoughts inside your own mind. Imagine a 26-year-old man named Hamza. Hamza works a demanding job while studying Islamic sciences in his free time. Every morning, he wakes up with a sincere intention. He wants to know Allah. He wants his heart to become softer. He wants his worship to become real, not just something his body performs. But when night comes and everything becomes quiet, his mind becomes loud. He lies in bed and the thoughts begin. "I am not doing enough. Other people are closer to Allah than me. Maybe my efforts are not accepted. Maybe I am wasting my life." So Hamza starts searching. He watches lectures about sincerity. He reads books about purification. He analyzes his intentions. He examines every feeling, from the outside. Someone might look at Hamza and think, this person is deeply spiritual. He spends so much time reflecting. But inside, he is exhausted. Because something has happened. His reflection has turned into a prison. One night, after making dua, Hamza experiences a painful realization. He thinks, I have spent so much time thinking about my relationship with Allah that I forgot to actually be present with Allah. This is exactly the kind of hidden movement Ibn Arabi examines. Because one of the deepest obstacles in purification is not simply having thoughts. The human being will always have thoughts. The heart will experience emotions. The mind will produce interpretations. The problem begins when you confuse your interpretation with reality itself. Ibn Arabi writes in Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah that the human being encounters reality through particular forms of understanding, conditions, and limitations. In other words, you do not experience everything exactly as it is. You experience through the state of your own being. Your fears affect what you see. Your desires affect what you notice. Your assumptions affect what you believe. The nafs constantly creates statements, I am successful, I am a failure, I am better than others, I am behind everyone else, I am accepted, I am rejected. And the danger is that we begin treating these statements as if they are absolute truth, but they are experiences passing through the human self. They are not Allah's final judgment. Imagine someone looking at the ocean through a small window. They only see a small piece of water. They say, the ocean is only this. Their statement is based on something real. They really did see water. But their mistake is believing their limited view represents the entire reality. The soul does this constantly. A person makes one mistake and says, I am a failure. A person performs one good deed and says, I am righteous. Both statements appear convincing. Both can become veils. Because both place the limited self at the center. The purified heart does not become a heart without thoughts. It becomes a heart that no longer bows to every thought that appears. Modern psychology calls this cognitive fusion. This happens when a person becomes so attached to a thought that they experience it as reality itself. A thought appears, I am not enough. But instead of recognizing, I am experiencing a thought of inadequacy, the person immediately accepts, this is who I am. Psychology teaches people to create distance from thoughts. Ibn Arabi goes further. He explains that these inner constructions become dangerous because they can prevent the servant from witnessing the truth of their relationship with Allah. The issue is not simply that a thought is negative. Even positive thoughts can become veils. A person who constantly thinks, I am spiritually advanced, may be just as trapped as someone who constantly thinks, I am worthless. Why? Because both are centered around the same thing, the self. And this is a moment many people never consider. They believe spiritual growth means replacing bad thoughts with good thoughts. But Ibn Arabi's approach is deeper. The goal is not to create a more attractive story about yourself. The goal is to stop being imprisoned by stories altogether. Because the ego can use both pride and insecurity. A person can feel superior, another person can feel inferior. But both can remain completely occupied with themselves. Ask yourself honestly, when you make a mistake, do you immediately turn toward Allah? Or do you spend hours inside a conversation with yourself about what that mistake says about you? When someone receives a blessing before you, what appears first? Gratitude or comparison? When you struggle spiritually, do you seek Allah? Or do you become obsessed with analyzing the person who is struggling? The heart becomes purified when it stops making every inner movement the center of existence. Because your thoughts are happening inside you. but they are not the definition of you. They are passing clouds. Allah is the sky. The cloud may cover your vision for a moment, but it never changes the reality above it. The heart becomes clear when it stops treating every thought as a message from reality. But purification does not end with seeing through the thoughts of the self. The question remains, when all these veils begin to fall away, what does the purified soul actually become? Imagine a 45-year-old father named Khalid. For decades, Khalid believed spirituality meant controlling everything: his emotions, his reputation, his family's opinion of him, his mistakes, his weaknesses. He wanted to become the kind of person everyone respected, the person people described as wise, the person people trusted, the person who always had the right answer. And from the outside, Khalid appeared successful. But after his children sleep one evening, he sits alone. The house becomes silent, and his young son's question from earlier keeps returning to his mind. His son had looked at him during prayer and asked, "Why do you always look worried when you are praying?" The question hurt because it revealed something Khalid had never admitted. Even his worship had become another place where he was trying to become someone. He was not only standing before Allah, he was performing a version of himself before Allah. And that realization changes everything. He begins asking a different question: what would happen if I stopped trying to become an impressive person and simply became present before my Lord? This is where Ibn Arabi takes the discussion to its deepest level. The earlier teachings revealed something uncomfortable. The ego can hide inside worship. The self can become attached to its own improvement. Thoughts can become walls between us and reality. Now we ask, if the soul is purified, what does it become? Ibn Arabi's answer is profound. The purified soul becomes receptive. It becomes capable of receiving divine knowledge clearly. In Fusus al-Hikam, Ibn Arabi discusses the concept of Insan al-Kamil, the complete human being. This does not mean someone who never struggles. It does not mean someone who becomes a flawless human being. It means someone whose humanity becomes a clearer reflection of divine names. The person becomes like a mirror. The mirror does not create the light, it receives and reflects it. The tragedy begins when the mirror forgets its purpose, when it starts saying, "Look at me," instead of, "Look at what I reflect." The human being has a similar journey. Allah gives you intelligence. Allah gives you abilities. Allah gives you opportunities. Allah gives you moments of guidance. The purified person does not look at these and say, "Look what I have become." The purified person sees, "Look what Allah has allowed to appear through me." Imagine a camera lens. The purpose of the lens is not to create the image. The lens allows the image to become visible. But if dust covers the lens, the problem is not the world outside. The world has not disappeared. The problem is distortion. The heart works the same way. Allah's signs are everywhere. His mercy is everywhere. His guidance surrounds the believer. But fear, pride, attachment, and false identity can distort what the heart receives. And this completely changes how we understand Tazkiyah. Many people think, Tazkiyah means I need to become better. Ibn Arabi shows something deeper. Tazkiyah means I need to remove what prevents what is already true from becoming visible. Yes, actions matter. Yes, obedience matters. Yes, avoiding sin matters. But beneath every action is the heart performing that action. The Prophet said, "Indeed, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound, and if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt." Indeed, it is the heart. The heart is where transformation begins. Two people can perform the same deed. One person becomes closer to Allah, another person becomes more attached to themselves. The difference is not always the action, the difference is the condition of the heart receiving that action. And this is the moment where many people see Tazkiyah differently. Purification is not becoming impressive before Allah. Allah does not need your performance. Purification is becoming transparent enough that Allah's guidance is no longer blocked by your own illusions. The greatest transformation is not, "Look how much I have changed." The greatest transformation is, "Look how much I have stopped standing in the way." Modern psychology calls a related idea psychological flexibility. Researchers describe how a person becomes healthier when they are not controlled by every emotion, thought, or identity they experience. Spiritually, Tazkiyah creates something even deeper. The person is no longer controlled by the demands of the ego. They become capable of humility, presence, surrender. The heart no longer fights reality, it receives it. The purified soul is not the one that shines by itself, it is the one that no longer blocks the light. But there is a final paradox hidden inside this journey, because even the desire to become purified can become the very thing that keeps the self at the center. That is where Ibn Arabi's deepest lesson begins. Imagine a 38-year-old man named Abdullah. For years, Abdullah has been searching for closeness to Allah. He wakes up early, he studies, he reflects, he tries to remove his weaknesses. He wants sincerity, he wants humility. He wants his heart to become pure. But one day, while sitting alone after prayer, he notices something disturbing. Even his desire for purification has become another thing he measures himself by. He thinks, "Am I more spiritual than before? Am I closer to Allah than other people? Am I becoming the kind of person Allah loves?" And suddenly he realizes something painful. The person who was trying to escape the ego was still constantly looking at the ego. This is the deepest paradox of Tazkiyah. The greatest obstacle to purification may become your desire to become pure. Now, this does not mean the desire for purification is wrong. It is one of the most beautiful desires a believer can have. But Ibn Arabi reveals a subtle danger. The nafs can attach itself even to spiritual goals. It can say, "I do not want worldly status anymore," but secretly replace it with, "I want spiritual status. I want to be the person who understands. I want to be the person who has reached something others have not." The journey toward Allah can quietly become another identity project. And this is where Ibn Arabi's teaching becomes extremely profound. The obvious understanding of Tazkiyah is, I need to remove everything bad from myself. But Ibn Arabi takes us deeper. The greatest illusion is not only, I have bad qualities. The deeper illusion is, I exist completely from myself. The servant does not become purified by making the self magnificent. The servant becomes purified by recognizing the true source of everything. Your patience, your worship, your understanding, your moments of sincerity, all are gifts before they are achievements. This is why the most spiritually mature people often become more humble, not more proud. Because as their awareness increases, their sense of personal ownership decreases. They do not say, "I became pure." They say, "Allah allowed me to see what was preventing me." They do not say, "I reached." They say, "Allah guided." The person desperate to become spiritually impressive remains trapped inside the self. The person who forgets their own greatness while remembering Allah becomes transformed. The last veil between you and Allah may be the version of yourself you created while trying to reach Him. But understanding purification intellectually is only the beginning. The real question is, how do you begin this process when you return to your normal life tonight with your phone, your thoughts, your fears, and your daily struggles. Think of a 31-year-old woman named Sarah. Sarah genuinely wants to grow closer to Allah. She does not lack sincerity, she does not lack desire. But she feels overwhelmed. Every day she asks herself, am I doing enough? Am I changing enough? Why do I still struggle with the same things? She thinks purification requires a dramatic transformation, a sudden spiritual breakthrough, a completely different version of herself. But Tazkiyah often begins much smaller. It begins with noticing the hidden movements of the heart. The first practice is the hidden intention audit. Connected to the first stage of purification, this practice helps you notice where the nafs quietly enters your actions. Before sleeping tonight, choose one action from your day. Not the biggest action, a small one. Maybe a kind message you sent, a reminder you shared, a moment where you helped someone. Then ask yourself honestly, would I still have wanted to do this if nobody knew? Do not ask this question to attack yourself. Ask it to become aware. The purpose is not to discover that you are secretly terrible. The purpose is to discover where the heart still needs purification. Because you cannot clean what you refuse to see. The second practice is the thought separation exercise, connected to the third teaching about thoughts becoming reality. When a painful thought appears, I am failing, I am behind, Allah is not accepting me, do not immediately fight it, do not immediately believe it. Simply add, I am noticing the thought that. I am noticing the thought that I am failing. I am noticing the thought that Allah has abandoned me. This small change creates space. You are no longer inside the thought, you are observing it. Psychology describes this as cognitive diffusion, separating yourself from mental events instead of becoming controlled by them. Spiritually, this prevents the nafs from becoming the narrator of your entire existence. The third practice is the mirror practice, connected to Ibn Arabi's description of the heart becoming receptive. Before sleeping, sit quietly for 2 minutes. Do not measure yourself. Do not calculate your spiritual progress. Do not create another performance review of your soul. Simply ask, what did Allah show me about myself today? Not, how good was I? Not, how far have I progressed? But, what did Allah reveal? Because purification is not only about changing yourself. It is about becoming aware of what Allah is already showing you. The heart changes when it learns to receive, not when it constantly tries to manufacture an image. Small moments of awareness become doors. A single honest observation can expose years of hidden patterns. A single moment of surrender can break an attachment you carried for a long time. The heart begins its purification the moment it becomes honest enough to see itself. And now, we return to the pain we began with the person who prayed, remembered Allah, and still felt something missing because after understanding Tazkiyah, that emptiness appears completely differently. Remember Yusuf from the beginning, the man who shared a reminder online and felt that small satisfaction when people praised him. At first, Yusuf thought his problem was that he needed more worship, more knowledge, more effort, more improvement. But now he understands something deeper. The problem was never only what he was doing. The question was, who was the person inside him doing it? This is the heart of Tazkiyah. It is not becoming someone who never struggles. It is becoming someone who can see the hidden movements of the soul before those movements control him. Ibn Arabi's vision of purification is not about creating a more impressive version of yourself. It is about removing the false layers that prevent the heart from receiving what Allah is already giving. The soul becomes purified when it stops demanding to be the center. Because Allah was never asking you to become extraordinary, He was asking you to become present. The heart is not purified when it becomes full of itself. It is purified when nothing remains between it and Allah. So sit with this question honestly. Think of the version of yourself that you are trying to build spiritually. Is that person becoming closer to Allah, or are you becoming attached to the image of someone who is close to Allah? Comment below, what is one hidden attachment inside your soul that you now realize Allah may be asking you to surrender rather than strengthen? Tazkiyah is not becoming someone new before Allah. It is removing everything that prevents you from recognizing who you already are with Him.